Good afternoon. My name is Akin Oshuntoki. I am the chairman of the Programs Committee at the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce. It is a great pleasure to welcome everyone to this event. On behalf of the President of the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce, and indeed the entire Council of NBCC, I welcome you warmly. Today, we are going to have an interesting discussion on the topic, winning at business during and after COVID-19. I am particularly delighted that we have three of Nigeria's best with us this afternoon. Allow me to do some housekeeping. I'd like to share a few slides with you about NBCC. The vision of NBCC is to be the foremost channel of trade and commerce between Nigeria and Britain. Our mission is to continually encourage and promote mutually beneficial trade relations between Nigeria and Britain. Quickly, I'd like to share our cardinal goals. Trade facilitation. We are involved in trade facilitation from both ends. We positively influence policy, communicate government policy, encourage networking amongst our members, and with programs like this, we enrich membership experience. Want to be a member? Please kindly contact the details right on the screen. Also, we'd like to share with you some of our upcoming training programs coming up. We have an overview of export and import trade standards training that is coming up on Thursday and Friday, 11th and 12th of June. Please contact our secretariat, and they will be glad to give you further details. Also, you can follow us on social media. The details are also shown on the screen. Very quickly, I'd like also to thank our sponsor, Factoring and Supply Chain Finance. They are our sponsors for this event. We thank them and will give them some time in the course of this event to say a little bit about their services. Now, quickly, before I introduce our speakers, I'd like to advise that those who have questions and answers should please make use of the Q&A icon so that when we get to Q&A, it will be easy and faultless. Let me quickly introduce our speakers. Ndidi Nwuneli, Managing Partner, Sahel Consulting, is here with us this afternoon. Ndidi is the Managing Partner of Sahel Consulting, Agriculture and Nutrition Limited, which works across West Africa, shaping agricultural policy, creating catalytic ventures, and implementing ecosystem solutions. Ndidi started her career as a management consultant with McKinsey and Company. She holds an MBA from Harvard Business School and an undergraduate degree with honors from the Wharton Business School. Ndidi was recognized as a young global leader by the World Economic Forum and received a national honor from the Nigerian government. She also serves on the boards of the Rockefeller Foundation and Nigerian-British. Ndidi, you are welcome. Thank you very much for coming on this afternoon. Our second speaker is as experienced, as qualified as you will expect. Yinka Adelekan is Chief Executive Officer of Agusto & Co. Yinka is the Chief Executive Officer of Agusto & Co., Nigeria's foremost credit rating agency. Yinka is a finance professional with prolific experience in corporate banking, risk management, business development, managing businesses for value creation, and financial analysis. Yinka has a master's in business administration from the University of Manchester. She also has an MSc in information management and finance from the University of Westminster. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to have Yinka Adelekan with us this afternoon. Yinka, thank you for joining us. I am not done. I'll also like to introduce our moderator. Our moderator is Segun Akintemi. Segun is CEO, Page Financials. Segun Akintemi is the CEO of Page Financials with almost 30 years experience in the banking financial services industry, of which he spent at least 15 years in senior management and executive positions, bringing his wealth of experience to the board of the various organizations he's privileged to serve on. He was director of the board of Law Union and Rock, and is presently a member of the board of IHS Towers. Segun has a BSc in Information Technology and a Master's in Business Administration from the Lagos Business School. He is also an alumnus of INSEAD Business School. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my job is done. We have very able speakers, and also we have a moderator that is very experienced, has vast understanding of the subjects at hand. My task is done. I'd like to hand over to Segun. Segun, thank you very much for joining us. The ball is in your court. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Oshotoke, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to this session. It's going to be a very interactive session, and we're going to take, first we're starting with Ndidi, and also Yinka. We'll be talking through issues bordering on what has happened pre-current and post-COVID. People say that we are in interesting times. What we'll be doing today is to actually bring different perspectives to how we can ensure as much as possible based on the realities of today and the opportunities. Yeah, sorry, I went up there. So based on the realities of today and the opportunities in the market, that would empower and enable us actually step up and move from a negative perspective to not just a positive perspective, but a very optimistic perspective. So as Mr. Oshitoki said, we have very appropriate people to talk through this session. And we'll start with Ndidi. And I believe she would want to talk through it and make a short presentation, which I would appeal that would listen well and get the best from it before we now go into the interactive session. So Ndidi, you're welcome. And could we please take your presentation now?
Thank you very much, Segun, and thank you everyone for joining. It's really an honor and privilege to speak with you today. I've been given 8 minutes to basically talk about the crisis, leadership roles and actions, and suggested interventions for the entrepreneurs and CEOs on this forum. It's no news to us that we're facing a crisis, and there are at least 4 lenses that this crisis we can view it from. First is the health crisis, the rising rates of transmission, global debt, and the limited capacity in our country to address the issues. This has exposed the fragility of our healthcare system in a way that we never imagined. There's also low compliance on social distancing and limited use of masks. There's a huge economic component, serious long-term and medium-term consequences. It's affecting GDP, inflation, and liquidity, affecting macro and microeconomic stability. There are losses, severe decline in remittances. We are experiencing the inflation, the currency devaluation, and food price hikes. Obviously, it's not all linked to COVID. It's also linked to the oil shocks and some of the underlying weaknesses in our economy. There are serious social issues that we're all facing. The education sector has been struck because we have a huge digital divide in our country, limited access to electricity, affordable internet. So teachers are affected, students are affected. Not everybody is able to log in and have Zoom education, and many people are affected. We have rising rates of domestic violence, unwanted pregnancies, rising crime rates, and there's a huge emotional challenge as well with mental health issues, rising anxiety in the land, and a gap in leadership. Now, I work in the food and agriculture landscape, and in this landscape over the last 2 months, we've seen 20 to 100% increases in food prices in our major cities, shortage of raw materials, delays in the planting season, a lot of SMEs being affected, greater interest obviously in the use of technology to reach consumers, increased price sensitivity because people can't afford relatively expensive food or even what they consider now luxury food items, and clearly rising hunger and malnutrition in the land. Now, COVID-19 has revealed the fragility we always knew existed in the food ecosystem. Clearly, there are serious data challenges where we don't know where the sources and uses of food are, how much supply and how much demand is available. We have very disorganized markets that don't lend themselves well to social distancing, very fragmented ecosystems, lack of social safety nets, and we have relatively weak organizations and policy frameworks. Now, this didn't just start with COVID-19. Obviously, there's been a huge challenge in our ecosystem for a long time, from inputs to production to storage to transportation, processing, marketing, and even consumption. And many of our farmers and even commercial farmers only achieve 30 to 40% of the yields of their international counterparts. Food in Nigeria is expensive. Household income is about 56% of household income is spent on food, according to the World Economic Forum, the highest rate in the world. So we've had these challenges with us. In spite of this, there are still tremendous opportunities. What COVID-19 has shown more than ever before is that there are opportunities in health, there are opportunities in education, and there are opportunities in agriculture. Everybody needs to eat every single day, sometimes if you can, 3 times a day. So there are opportunities across the entire spectrum. And what we see is that young people are taking the lead. We have created a portal called nourishingafrica.com. It's a one-stop shop for entrepreneurs in the food and agriculture sector. And what we're doing is providing information, funding, training, and linkages to entrepreneurs. And this is a free portal. And what we've been seeing through this nourishingafrica.com is that young people are leapfrogging, leveraging innovation and technology in our ecosystem. But they are still facing a lot of issues. And many of you on the line probably are dealing with some of the liquidity issues, some of the challenges around paying staff during lockdowns, the health and safety challenges around managing teams. There are lots of issues around how you survive during this time. And many of our entrepreneurs across the continent have either closed down temporarily or even shut down operations. So what are some leadership roles and actions required at this time? The first I want to point out is that this is a long-term battle. Many people think I wake up tomorrow, COVID-19 will disappear. All international experts have told us that it's a 12 to 18-month battle, which means that we have to brace ourselves as entrepreneurs, as CEOs and managers for a long-term engagement. Our lives will not be the same. Our countries and businesses have to change. First, we're going to need to change our mindsets. We're going to need to have new visions about how we're going to disrupt, redesign. We're going to have new visions around how we manage costs and how we do scenario planning. For every team that I'm involved in, we have our scenario plans as to how we're going to manage funds for the rest of the year. We're going to have to leverage technology and innovation in a different way. And we're going to have to think about collaborations like never before. We're also going to have to start shaping policy as entrepreneurs and getting more involved in ensuring that the ecosystem is right for us. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste, and we have to change our mindset. I don't know how many of you have seen this cartoon, but it made me laugh when I saw it. It said, who led the digital transformation of your company, the CEO, the CTO, or COVID-19? For many of us who are technology dinosaurs and resisting the urge to get on Slack and Zoom and think about working from home, like me, whenever my staff said I want to work from home, I said, no, we can't work from home. Now we're facing this like never before. We have to move as CEOs from survival mode to a mode where we're thriving, to legacy mode where we're thinking about how to build our businesses. And it means we need new business models. We need business models that are first resilient to shocks. It means we have to embed resilience into our DNA. We need to think about how we mitigate shocks, how we plan for shocks, because COVID-19 is just one shock, but there are going to be many more shocks coming up, including climate change as a huge shock. We have to ensure that our business models are demand-driven, not in the short term, but all through. That means there has to be measurable value addition. We have to leverage technology, data, and innovation, and we have to think about cost-efficient models that are dynamic with clear systems and structures. And finally, we have to get better about telling our story and how we're branding like never before. So some suggested interventions as I round up. First, as entrepreneurs, we are going to have to become leaders in every sense of the word, where we have agility, the ability to wake up every day and say, I can move quickly, I see an opportunity, I can grab it. And our employees, we have to change their mindsets around ownership, around their hunger, around their humility. We need to, and I have a long list here, but I'm running out of time. We need to think about not just how we stabilize our business, but how we adapt to the new realities and how we shape our ecosystem. And we need to reimagine. And our employees listening also have to retool. Now more than ever before, your bosses are going to be saying, what value are you adding? And are you somebody I can count on as a soldier during a war? Because what we're facing is a war. Now, I'll just give a few examples of how we are doing this. As Ace Foods, a food company which I co-founded based in Sangota, we process nutritious food for Nigerians. And immediately we said we have to start giving donations. We have to start feeding people as an organization. And we did this, partnered with Ogun State, donated to Lagos State, donated to all sorts of nonprofits. And at some point we said, we're still a going concern. So can we ask other people to join us to donate? So we basically launched a program to feed 50,000 people, and individuals started donating, which allowed us to sell our products and at the same time partner with NGOs in Plateau State, in Enugu State, all over the country to feed people. With Nourishing Africa and with Sahel, we basically said we need to scale a digital business. Gone are the days where your business is not digital and it's not a department, it is part of your DNA of your company. And how can you do that quickly? Even with our CSR, we moved our Sahel Scholars Program, which we offer in universities across Nigeria, to a digital conference, and which allowed us to reach students all over the country. And with our Scholars Program, we added a program for educators, which allowed us to reach agriculture faculty all over the continent. And what digital allows you to do is to break down walls. And this was not only cost effective, much cheaper than going to schools and having to feed thousands of students when you're doing lectures and training and internships, but allows you to scale. And we've shifted all our trainings now to online. I'll end with a quote, which is my current mantra. Mbelede kaja madike, it's an Igbo word, Igbo proverb, which means disasters help to sift out the resilient, resourceful, and brave. This is an opportunity for you as an entrepreneur to demonstrate your resilience, how resourceful you are, how brave you are. And right now, more than ever before, we need courageous entrepreneurs to step up. So I want to challenge you to start thinking about how to retool, remodel, rebuild, infusing digital and governance into your DNA. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Ndidi. That was pretty comprehensive, and there's been a lot of demand for your slides. But I just want to do a short and a quick summary. I think your focus was talking about how we can get very efficient, how we can leverage technology. Of course, collaboration was a major issue that we have to make sure we collaborate with organizations. And of course, you stressed the importance of ensuring we start looking at building a new business model, because there's a saying that old ways won't open new doors. What has happened is that COVID has actually created very different type of doors than we used to have. So we have to develop new ways to actually open those new doors. We have to be resilient to shock, which I find very interesting. A lot of us do not subject ourselves to any form of stress test, even as a human being. So we have to develop those machinery to ensure. And of course, very interesting point I gathered was how you want to, how employees should retool themselves. I find that very interesting. Employees naturally would default to employers for every form of acquiring experience, creating skills and actually honing their skills. But we've gotten to a time where employees have to take on that gauntlet themselves and actually drive growth. So thank you very much, Ndidi. I'd come back to you with a few questions, but would want to take Yinka's slide now, and would give her a few minutes to talk through her slide, and would now take some questions. Thank you very much. Yinka, please, you can unmute and.
Okay.
Yeah, still. Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to be sure you can see my slides.
Yes, we can now, yes.
Okay. Okay, good morning, everybody. It's indeed a pleasure to be on this forum. Good morning, distinguished members of NBCC and other ladies and gentlemen listening to us. It's my pleasure to speak at this forum, Winning at Business During and After COVID-19. COVID-19 has been termed the Black Swan event because it is a catastrophe that has led to economic hardship that nobody could foresee. And it has also led to a lot of countries going through severe economic risk, as the case is with Nigeria. And what it has also done, so before I go into my slide, is it has made businesses have to react. And even in Agusto and Co, we've had to react. We've had to retest some of our business beliefs. Prior to this time, one of the things we used to say in our rating business was it had to be physical, face-to-face meetings. That has changed. We've had to embrace video conferencing. It has its challenges, but it gets the work done. And so we've had to make some changes in our business. We've had to look at our business critically. And I think that's the case with every other person, every other CEO on this forum, or even who's running a business. So now I have a quote here from Bloomberg. I don't know if you can see it. It says, being an entrepreneur is really isn't really about starting a business. It's a way of looking at the world, seeing opportunities where others see obstacles, and taking opportunities where others take refuge. So today, as we look at Nigeria, what are we faced with and what's happening? We have no choice but to be truthful with the issues of Nigeria that COVID-19 has come to portray or reflect the weak macroeconomic environment that Nigeria had, especially after the recession we have in 2015. So what do we see now? Weak government revenues, predominantly due to the drop in oil prices, weak foreign currency earnings by the federal government. And what does that lead to? We think of what happened in the 2015-2016, it means that the CBN is going to start to ration foreign currency again. It means that a lot of businesses are not going to be able to access foreign currency. And what it also would tell us is that there will be a significant premium in the parallel market vis-a-vis the official market. And the premium could be between 16 to 25%, depending on the official rate that you're working with. And what do we also see? So we're going to have high inflation. Currently, it's about 12.34%. But we believe that it will close the year at about 15%. And why do we say so? We believe that prices will go up due to shortages, which we expect or we've started to experience due to supply chain disruptions. Currency devaluation is also going to mean higher input prices, and food inflation are going to continue to drive up inflation for Nigeria. Interest rates will be pressured by rising inflation, government borrowing from the domestic market, low appetite of foreign portfolio investors for our government securities, especially given that they believe that the interest rates of government securities are quite low. And so for even an investor into Nigeria, when you think about high inflation of about 13% on an average, and then you think of treasury bills rates of about 6.7%, then you know you're making negative returns. So profitability of most businesses would moderate due to the fragile macroeconomic environment, less profits from business. It will also mean that lower taxes for government. So what do we see? Weak purchasing power. Some people have lost their jobs, and even those that have maintained their jobs are having to be cautious in terms of spending. So we expect a recession. The recession will be worse than 2016, and we're looking at, it could be as high as -7%, it could be much lower, depending on how government manages it. So where do we see the sectors that COVID-19 has impacted? The positive sectors we all know: telecommunications, e-commerce, manufacturing of healthcare products, agriculture to an extent, those who are trading locally produced, those who would enjoy positive impact. And that's because I will talk about it towards the end. As we embrace localization and the world moves from globalization, then clearly locally produced goods will become a top burner. The low negative impact to be oil and gas upstream, the IOCs, and that's because they have economies of scale. Oil and gas downstream because crude oil prices are coming down, and therefore PMS will come down as well. Banking industry, the people they're banking would suffer, but they would benefit from digital banking space, investments. So the high negative impact sectors, the sectors that will struggle to emerge from this crisis are the oil and gas upstream indigenous companies, oil and gas services companies, trade, general commerce, transportation, specifically aviation, and some of the hospitality players. So what do I see? Competitive structure of the various industries, a lot of industries are going to change. COVID-19 has accelerated changes, and it rightfully said it, digital is the new norm. It is no longer a tool you use for competitive advantage, it's the new norm. And one of the things I wanted to say is that during the severe lockdown, the banks benefited from the cashless initiative that the Central Bank of Nigeria started in maybe about 2011. People were able to move easily to the digital platforms. And as the lockdown eased, you can see that a lot of branches were full of people waiting to get in. And one of the things I've heard from banks is that they were all rushing in to get cards, to get tokens, to be able to do things digitally. So it's no longer a tall order. It's now something that COVID-19 has made attractive to people. So banks don't need to sell the digital platforms anymore. People now understand it's something that they all need to embrace. But even in the banking space, without calling names of some players in other segments, you will find out that financial institutions that have not invested in digital platforms will suffer pain unless they quickly react and start to make this investment. So also, what do we see? Buyers would have weak purchasing powers. Companies will need to be more innovative. Fast-moving consumer goods will need to have, we already sell their products in terms of lower packages. They will need to sell it in small packages. Sorry, can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Sorry, somebody said they couldn't see my
Yes,
slides.
we can.
Okay, so thank you. So there'll be supply chain disruptions would mean companies will need to look at local ways of generating inputs. Some companies who have done this in the past, who have invested in backward integration, will be better off. But you see, the competitive structure of businesses have changed. I wanted to give an example of a Disney. Disney, if you know Disney, part of the experience was going to the theme parks, the souvenirs were sold in the theme park, all that will change. COVID-19 has come to accelerate change, and we all have no choice but to embrace it. So so what do we see? Where are we now? Slower economic activities, government are struggling with health and economic risk. We're in a recession. Already, if you saw the figures that were released yesterday by looking at Q1 GDP figures, it was 1.87 in Q1 2020 compared to about 2.1 in Q1 2019. So it's also an indication of what's to come. So it's going to make CEOs start to ask questions. How do I keep my staff safe? How can I ensure that my business remains resilient and profitable? Do I need to change the business model? How can innovation help me? And critically, businesses that will reinvent themselves are those that will succeed during this time. So I won't really talk about winning at COVID because I think so what are we seeing? The change in customer behavior. One, customers have been left worse off. They will begin to bargain hunt and spend only on priority spend. The lockdown has made people embrace more on online and e-commerce solutions. And the interesting thing is that customers have downloaded apps. Now, these apps have allowed them to do things like food or grocery shopping. But the critical thing that companies need to take away from this app is that by having people download app, you are able to do data analytics and you're able to improve on your predictive techniques for understanding customer behavior. And this is something that we shouldn't let it pass us at this time. Also for organizations, more organizations are pursuing cost strategy. They will seek ways to reduce their cost. Some people would think, people are going to start to question the amount of office spaces that they have now. Do they really need that amount of office space? The nature of work has changed. And therefore, the nature of even consumption would change because what it means is that people can effectively work from home and people would demand other things because they're working from home. So what do we need to do? We need to start retesting our beliefs as CEOs of businesses. And I gave our example and I said, before now, we thought face-to-face meeting was the only way we could render a written service. That has changed. Video conferencing is serving its purpose. We need to create originality. We need to develop new business. This is not a time for us to play the defense, but this is a time for us to be on the offensive. We need to create new markets, be innovative. I'm saying innovation has to go and it cuts across different sectors. For instance, why do I have to go to a bank to pick up my card? There must be a way around it. So we need to focus on innovation, select new markets, and play in those markets. Look for synergies, those we can partner with in order to create new markets. And so for me, winning after COVID-19 is one, innovative market development. And I've said it, we need to rethink our products. We need to move from defense to offensive, improve operational efficiencies using digital transformation, be careful on employee reduction because they are the heart and soul of your business, and invest in more securities as more people begin to work from home, and use the strength of social media. So I would stop there. Thank you very much, and we'll take the questions. So over to you, Segun.
Thank you very much, Yinka. Thank you very much. Just to do a quick recap of your comments, you started off by actually breaking it down in terms of the fundamentals, the issues we have currently in terms of our macroeconomic environment, the issue of FX rationing, which of course naturally leads to premium in the parallel market. We talked about inflation and the reality of the fact that inflation will naturally go up. We're at about 12.45% now. And every analyst has said probably would beat or even go above, probably would go up because nobody would want to invest in an economy where there is a large variance between the inflation rate and, of course, the returns. So if we're using the treasury bills as benchmark today, would find a negative margin of almost about maybe about 7% thereabouts. So
Yeah.
it's those problems are, and of course purchasing power, it's fast diminishing. If we're going to even use, what I say is that if we're using the market basket as a basis of arriving at inflation, definitely would not be. It's a great joke to talk about 12%. It's definitely way over that, even within the last couple of months. And you now came up with some very, very clear solutions. You talked about backward integration, which I find very interesting. And people tend to think that it's only those in the manufacturing sector that can actually consider backward integration. But I think there's no business that doesn't have an opportunity to look at backward integration. You talked about reinventing ourselves. So people feel that, oh, they've learned so much. But we need to actually start reinventing ourselves. We need to focus on priority spending. You mentioned that. And you also mentioned something very interesting, retest our beliefs. So yes, we have the beliefs, you know what we're doing, but we need to subject them to also a lot of tests and also transit from being defensive to becoming offensive. That is something we also need to pay a bit of attention to. And you also mentioned, of course, the fact that we have to be careful with employee reduction. Naturally, most organizations, the first thing they do is they want to reduce staff because that's the easiest way to, of course, hit the bottom line. That is not something you'd advise that we consider at this time. If at all, it has to be very, very well thought through and a lot of attention paid to it. It's interesting because there's also something I stumbled on. It's a saying by a guy called Ndidi, which says that if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at actually change. So it's just about our perspective to how we see things. And going back to Ndidi now, if I may just ask, based on, of course, your presentation and, of course, your experience, haven't even witnessed a lot of recession. And the interesting thing is Nigeria just has a way of bouncing back. Based on your background and, of course, working with a lot of entrepreneurs all across Nigeria, what are those financial options, financing options, and business strategies that they should consider, particularly for entrepreneurs at this time, based on where the market is and where we all are for people?
Thank you very much for the question. I would say that right now is actually an interesting time to raise money. There are quite a few opportunities for grants and very affordable loans being offered, especially if you're an entrepreneur in the agricultural and food landscape. We have been approached by at least 4 organizations who have asked to partner with us to give supports to entrepreneurs. And starting the month of June, we're going to start working to give grants to entrepreneurs in the food and agricultural landscape with a big focus on women. But I know that it's not just our organization. Ag Invest, which is a USAID funded project, GIZ, DFID, are all giving grants. In addition, there are a range of international organizations outside the development partners that are doing this. Mastercard Foundation is doing some very interesting work with quite a few of our local banks. So what is interesting is that there are a whole slew of COVID recovery and response programs, funding programs for entrepreneurs. But what do you need? You need to be investment ready. You need to demonstrate that your company can survive COVID and thrive post-COVID. And that's why I mentioned that we have to retool and rebuild. I underscored this point of price sensitivity, which Yinka also underscored. You know, I have entrepreneurs who are making biscuits and they realize in COVID and post-COVID, biscuits are a luxury. So let me change to bread. People are going to have to eat bread. I can use the same raw materials, but I'm going to pivot to bread. I have a friend who was making cakes. Now she's just making bread because cakes are also now more of a luxury item that you won't eat on a daily basis. If you were doing fresh fish, you realize that people are going to, you know, not prioritize fresh fish, so they're drying the fish because you need a longer shelf life, you need it to travel longer. So there are lots of shifts that are occurring. And if you're not willing to shift your mindset as an entrepreneur and demonstrate that your business is investment ready, you can't take advantage of these funds. You also have to have strong governance structures. You know, one of the things I've been preaching for the last 20 years in Nigeria is governance. Having a strong board of directors, having credible individuals who support you, because nobody wants to support a one-man or one-woman business. I want to make sure if I give a grant to you, you're not going to use it to pay your house rent or to buy a new car. It's actually going to go directly into your company. And Leap wrote a book many, many years ago, which is a best-selling book called Get on Board. I highly recommend it to all of you. I think there's an e-copy because it's important you put in place a governance structure and have regular board meetings because the funders are going to want to see that you have those governance and then you have to have financial management systems and controls. Many of our companies are using COVID as the reason why they haven't audited their books for 2019. You have, you know, that's not an excuse. You have to show your annual reports. For many of the grants that Ace Foods is even applying for, they've asked for 3 years worth of financial records, including 2019. How many of us are willing to share the audited financials for 3 years? So I'm saying there's funding, that's the good news. And if you're ready and are well positioned to take advantage of these opportunities, there are many opportunities available to you.
Thank you very much, Ndidi. If we want to just, take that a bit further, what about the impact of technology too on the entrepreneurs? And if you could just answer quickly, how do you think they can embrace technology in applying themselves better?
So right now, there's no business that can survive if it's not leveraging technology. And I'm very excited that a lot of my farmer friends and investee companies that we work with that may have been in the poultry industry are now saying, well, we're in poultry, so we're growing chicks, day-old chicks, but we're also going to start selling them online, selling our products online. And just last week, one of our investee companies, Dainties, based in Kwara, I ordered chicken and gizzard from them sitting in my home in Lekki, and I got it delivered. This is a company in Kwara saying, you know what, our customer base has to be expanded. We're going to have to change the way we work. And it's set up a website in record time with mobile payments that is leveraging. And so every single entrepreneur has to think. Somebody asked the question, I'm in the real estate training business. I said, well, guess what? Nigeria is no longer your market alone. Now you can actually train people all over the world. Many of us used to, when we have physical training, we restricted to participants in Lagos. Now you have participants all over the place. And I think so these tools are affordable and you can train yourself. And I also wrote in there that there's so many training programs. Harvard has free training programs right now, INSEAD, Stanford, literally certificate-based training programs that are free. You have no excuse why you're not equipping yourself with the skills and tools to win today, and thinking about each aspect of your business and what aspects can be digital.
Well, thank you very much. Very clear, concise, and direct. If I may ask, Yinka, very quickly, looking at where do you see the economy post-COVID? Because the reality is that people that are forward-thinking are already looking at how life would be like after COVID, because they've moved on beyond grappling with the issues of COVID. So where do you see the economy? How would people be positioned? Then particularly, how do you think, or what do you think would happen, particularly to customer behavior as we move along into the post-COVID era?
Okay, thank you, Segun. I think I should first say that the truth is we are in the recession and people need to address that. And our ability to come out of the recession would determine the ability of government to address the health issues, because the health issue is a major issue that has created an economic risk. If we were following the news, I think on Sunday, the US government issued a travel ban on Brazil, and it had predominantly to do with how they have handled the pandemic. We need to ensure that we handle the pandemic very well so that we can reduce things like this happening to us. Because if we have travel bans from, say, the US, the UK, that would not be good for our supply chain. Also, the government needs to remove, the foreign exchange policy needs to be addressed. We would not be an attractive investment climate when people know that there are multiple exchange rates. We must allow the official market to reflect realities, because as long as we have arbitrage opportunities, foreign investors will be hesitant to come in, and even it affects business because of the cost of the rising cost of imports. I personally think that we need to remove the interstate lockdown so that we can allow food move around. All these various lockdown and police checkpoints is not good for our supply chain. And we need to do this quickly to bring down food prices and to keep food inflation down. Regarding consumer behavior has changed totally. People now embrace e-commerce. People have gone digital in terms of their needs. The only problem that we see is at the end of the chain, which is the logistics arm of things, which still has a bit of human intervention. They need to fine tune that. But things have changed. Consumer pattern has changed. People that predominantly would not have gone into banks are beginning to realize, but before would not have embraced the digital platform of banks, are beginning to realize they have no choice in it. I have a friend, if she's watching this, she's going to have a laugh. She doesn't believe in using digital platforms. And then she runs an SME. And time to make payments for staff salaries, she couldn't do it because she had not embraced the digital platform. So she's now realized it's something we need to do, and it's something she needs to do, and it's something she needs to do critically. So what it also brings for us is that now that a lot of customers are going to use apps, it makes us to be more, it enables a predictive pattern, being able to understand customers' behavior, their spending pattern, when they spend, what they spend on. So it even helps in terms of, for businesses, replenishment of stocks. Well, I mean, for a supermarket, if you are doing e-commerce, then you know the stocks that are moving or the products that are moving and the ones that you need to replenish quickly. So it's changed a lot of things for us. It's here to stay, and it cuts across all businesses. I mean, look at one of the businesses or one of the segments I feel has been impacted by COVID-19 is the cinemas. And they've decided to innovate. I don't know if they've commenced it, but they're beginning to look at people coming to sit in their cars and watch films on the ground. True. But yeah, because the reality of their business is 50, 60 people are not going to come and sit cramped in a nice cold room to watch a film. That has changed. So every business has to innovate. You have to be able to sense, look at the gaps in your business, be able to evolve yourself. I mean, even looking at us, my business, in terms, we have multiple business lines. Some business lines have been more impacted than others. And what it has meant for us is that we have now used digital reforms or transformation to change that line of business. And what it has also created for us is a new market. Prior to now, we were B2B, but now we're beginning to be B2C in terms of that business line. So the pattern has changed. It's not going to go for some time. Thanks, Segun.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Yinka. Very clearly, particularly what scares a lot of entrepreneurs is actually the fact that they can't even plan. So if you can't even plan what your business would look like in 3 months, in 6 months, it becomes a problem for you. You also mentioned food flow. It's important the states open up. But, I listened to a webinar in the last few days where a governor of one of the most strategic northern states actually came up to say that he is tired of what the policemen are doing and that he had to use his commissioners and the PAMSEC to start going out to be preventing the police checkpoints from collecting money from people. So that is the extent to which, governors are resorting to almost micromanaging for survival. But it's an interesting situation we find ourselves in. At this point, we would want to invite Mr. Lanre Bakari, who is the CEO and representing a company called Factoring and Supply Chain Finance. They are the sponsors of this program.
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Bakari, we can hear you. Please go.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Akintemi, for the job you are doing. Let me just, by way of introduction, my name is Lanre Bakari. I run Factor and Supply Chain Finance Limited. Factor and Supply Chain Finance Limited is part of Pan-African Capital Holdings. As a word of introduction, if I may just refer to your conversation, your question to Ndidi earlier, when you ask her what are the financing options that we have. And I would say receivable financing actually present an alternative to the mainstream finance, and that's what we are trying to do in the financial services space. For us, over the past, since the pandemic started, you've seen a lot of intervention programs from authorities to support the economy. And for us, I think earlier payment is much better than borrowing, whether I would like it or not, especially for enterprises that have good counterparties. So coming to our services and what we do, as you can see, we are part of an investment banking group, Pan-African Capital Holdings. For us, if you look at the SME, for example, because the focus of what we're trying to do is basically the SME. When you look at the contribution they make to the economy, the SMEs, contribute not less than 48% to GDP. They are responsible to, like 90% of the businesses and 84% of the employment generated. So the SME, whether we like it or not, must have an alternative where they can discount their invoices and to be able to, indeed, when you look at this, what has happened to everybody, not to be SME alone, but they are much Truth is, the supply chain has been disrupted. We are facing devaluation about 20%. So technically, everybody's already we're in this challenge together. So anything that can be used to support the SMEs as a way to early payments, and I think is much, it will be welcomed by everybody because of even replacement of their current stock, nobody can say. So any intervention by the authorities have to be focused by the SMEs so that they can be able to stay afloat. But having said that, for us, we feel we can provide receivable financing either on recourse or non-recourse basis, and of course, the reverse. So which is the offering to the table, and then it's an ecosystem we are trying to galvanize and create the platform, especially for SMEs in this space, they have a credible counterparties. So that is what we are trying to do. Slightly different in the financial services space, for example, we have banks or other financials who provide a sort of receivable finance or factoring. Of course, you have the invoice discounting, which is a variant of factoring. Of course, it's on a recourse basis.
Okay.
So, which is what we're trying to do, and try to create awareness in the larger ecosystem of the financial services sector, so that the SME, which are the engine and the driver of the economy,
yeah.
Pre-COVID, no, and even post-COVID,
can have access, yeah. Okay.
They need to be properly safeguarded.
Okay. Okay.
So,
okay.
So more fundamentally, the problem is even much more than the SME today, because whether I would like it or not, even the big corporates that are so-called blue chip, everybody wants to retain enough cash available. And what happens at the end of the day is the SME that suffer. So there must be a platform whereby resources can be channeled to those SMEs so they can and they can,
because the SMEs remain the engine of the economy anyway. Thank you very much, Mr. Bakari. I think your details are on the screen, so and also the website of the organization. So there could be other references to it as we go along. Thank you very much. At this point, would want to go into the Q&A. We have a few questions already, and would want to start taking them on. And the first, I'd like to start from, I think, someone that wants to know, kindly advise how does a micro lender manage in this situation where cash flow is slow, repayment pressured, and liquidity scarce remodel? I don't know if Yinka would want to take this question.
Well, what I would advise the person to do is the person should approach their bank for emergency loans. I think that many times people are apprehensive about approaching the banks. But the truth is, if you have good business fundamentals, which have just been impacted by COVID-19, and you believe that your business can still continue to thrive, then the banks will be willing to give you emergency loans. At least what I would advise is approach the banks for emergency loans.
Okay. Ndidi, do you have a different or another additional opinion to that, since you also manage a lot of farmers too?
Yeah, I would just add that a lot of us have to rethink our models. Micro lenders can actually make money at this time, but they're going to have to change the customer base that they've had historically. What we are going to see is that a lot of other groups are going to be looking, especially farmers, are going to be looking for short-term loans, working capital at this time. So if historically your customers were based in the cities, you might have to think about which ecosystem is still growing, which sector is still growing. And I can tell you agribusiness right now is definitely going to be a growth sector. And so shift your customer base and shift your network.
Okay, thank you very much. There's also someone that is seeking clarification on value-based intermediation in creating solutions to the current macroeconomic problems. Would you want to talk about that? I think it's just basically how do you use value to drive growth, I believe. Ndidi, you want to start with that? Okay, please go on.
I was just trying to understand what the question really is, but I will try and explain from what I can see. So they're saying how do you create value in a recession? And I'm saying a recession is actually a time where opportunities exist. And you know, I was speaking to somebody I know in a particular business, and they said they can't meet their demands. So there are different things you can do to be innovative. Okay, let's even look at when we realized COVID was upon us, and we needed masks. What happened? The likes of Tiffany Amber started to produce masks. People started to re-engineer their businesses. People started to innovate. You have the resources, so it's all about using your existing resources to create new businesses and create value. The masks are ideal now. So you go on the streets of Lagos, a lot of people are wearing different masks. Whether it's made with the Ankara fabric, it's made with different kinds of fabric, but people are beginning to re-engineer their business and create value for people. And that's what we really need to do. It's being able to re-engineer our businesses and being able to create value. So that's what I would answer.
Thank you very much. There's a question which seems very interesting. It says, talking about digital adoption, do you feel we need a deep cultural change to drive adoption? A vivid example is the crowding of banks after lockdown were lifted. How do financial service providers bridge the trust gap? What do we think?
Okay, I can answer that.
Yinka, please go.
Okay. So I've spoken to some people in the banks, and what I hear is that a lot of people are coming in, people that didn't have cards before the COVID-19 have realized the essence of having cards, because that's the only way they will have access to their money. So what I understand is a lot of people are coming in to embrace the digital platforms so that they can have their day-to-day needs be met. But be that as it may, one of the issues I have with banks, and I think the banks need to innovate more, is I got a letter from my bank, an email from my bank last week asking me to come and pick up my card. Now, I know that in this climate of today where we have COVID-19 and there are health issues, I'm not going to go and expose myself by going into a bank to pick up my card. So banks need to look for ways to partner with logistic companies to have people's cards being delivered to them.
Innovative.
Yeah, to be innovative. So that's what I would say. The education is there. I think the government has spent a lot in creating awareness. And when we say that Nigerians don't want to embrace digital, I don't think that's true. We're one of the highest users of internet in Africa. We're one of the highest users of internet. Nigerians are very strong on social media. Somebody says something on Twitter or tweets something wrong, the amount of people that are going to go after that person. So we are digital savvy.
I agree.
Yeah, we are digital. I think we are.
I agree. Okay, Ndidi, this is for you. Do you think it will be better for organizations to invest in training already existing employees on technology advancement, lay off those that are not technology compliant and hire those that are, or hire consultants on retainership to manage a tech department of businesses focusing on their core business, which is, I think, talking about backward integration or something. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think right now every single company has to have someone in-house who understands technology and leverages it. It can't be a side department anymore. It has to be a core component of everything you do. And so that means you can hire them on contract, but they need to be fully dedicated to helping you re-engineer and rethink your business. And in terms of employees, honestly, I find that when I look for employees, it's people who are hungry, who are passionate, and who have emotional intelligence. You can learn everything else, but that basic desire to learn and grow is the most important thing. And the work ethic is the most important thing. And if I can just build on the banking issue that Yinka talked about, I think there's still a huge financial literacy challenge in Nigeria. And I think the Nigerian banks have only scratched the surface of what is required. In 2007, I did a study for DFID before a company, EFINA, was born, and I helped start EFINA, which stands for Enhancing Financial Innovation and Access. At that time, we only had 7 million bank accounts in this country. I think right now, when I looked most recently, we were between 40 and 50 million bank accounts. And trust me when I say that is unacceptable, not just because that's the adult population, but if I asked everybody on this line, how many of you have bank accounts? Many of you have 3 or 4 or 5. Your companies have 4 or 5. So divide that 50 by 5. It means we're still largely unbanked in Nigeria, and we need to bridge that digital divide. This is a wake-up call for those of you in the financial services sector. You need to build the trust, but you also need to go out and find consumers and customers. I would say let's leverage our post offices, let's leverage our primary healthcare centers and ADPs in our 744 local governments, and let's get people banked, because Nigerians cannot afford in the 21st century not to have access to financial systems and support from financial systems as well.
Okay. Just let me take one more question finally, and I think this goes to Ndidi again. As a company with specific focus on data mining, using BI and AI tools for actionable insights, how best can we leverage and grow market share post-COVID?
This is a great time for any company that has data, because all of us need data, and we're willing to pay for data. Not only development partners, I just got off a call with WFP, the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, telcos, just before this one, about data. We need data because we need to know how to serve our most vulnerable people. So if you have data available, please package yourself well, because all of us need your data. Get it out there, get that information out there, because we don't want to be blind as we're making decisions and making investments right now. And I do a lot of primary research, and data is valued, trust me, and people are willing to pay.
Thank you very much. I just want to appeal that the other questions will be forwarded to the chamber, and we'll try to get the speakers to actually respond to them accordingly. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. I'd want to say a very big thank you to Ndidi and Yinka for sparing the time to join us here. It's a very rainy afternoon in Lagos here, and everybody wants to very quickly get back to a host of other things. So I want to thank everybody that has